everybody. Today we're going to be talking about the Kodak Anniversary box camera from 1930. This is a special edition made only in 1930 in a quantity of 500,000 that was given to kids of 12 years of age at that particular time to get them interested in photography, to help Kodak boost their foothold. Even though it was their 50th anniversary, they were still heavily marketing, trying to get more and more people interested in photography and buying their products. We'll talk about this today. So I'm going to go through the process of loading this camera, first of all, of taking it apart, which kind of can be confusing in and of itself, and then we're going to load it with some film and go out and shoot it and process the film and take a look at the prints. So stay tuned. This is going to be a really cool episode. If you're into these old cameras and film photography, I think you're really going to enjoy this. This is actually my first box camera, and I just picked this up for Christmas. But I'm really looking forward to trying it out because it's in such fantastic condition. Look at this, it's very pristine. The gold foil that used to be here is missing, but I'm not too concerned about that as the embossing is still here. The viewfinder is pretty fogged up and dirty. I'm probably not going to be able to use that when I shoot it today, but I think it's got wide enough angle that we can take a pretty good guess at what we're seeing and possibly use another camera with a similar field of view to get an idea of what we're framing up before we take our shots today. This camera again is another unique example in that the little handle is still attached. A lot of these, this handle has been lost, torn off many years, decades ago. Again, this is an 89-year-old camera, so it's amazing that even this little handle's still on there and it's just in such good shape. On the back we have film counter window so you can see what number the film is. This particular camera is pretty cool because it uses 120 film, which is still readily available today. It's a standard medium format film that all medium format cameras have used for decades and decades. Fortunately, this one takes that film and it's going to be very easy. We're not going to have to re-roll it. We're going to be able to use the same spool that's on here and just go with it. If it was the other style box cameras that Kodak made a little later in the 30s and so on, it would take a 620 style film, which is no longer sold today, and would have to be re-rolled from 120. You would have to take a 120 film and roll it onto a different spool. This is a 120 spool. A 620 spool looks just like this, but it's much skinnier in the middle, and it's at a smaller diameter. It's a smaller diameter here, and it's a skinnier middle. So you would actually have to re-roll the film. The film itself is the same, just a completely different spool. So I don't have to do this. This camera takes 120 film, so we're good to go. So first let's talk about opening the camera itself. The camera has two latches. This is the basic of the basic. It's just has latches as one viewfinder, and it has a shutter flipper thing for the shutter. And that's it. We don't have apertures, we don't have different shutter speeds, we don't have any of that. We have one aperture, we have one shutter speed, period, and then a knob on the side to wind our film with. But let's take this apart right now. First off, we're going to do, it's got two clips here and here, two locking clips. We're going to release those two clips, push down and release that clip, and then we're going to push down and release the side clip. And then the other thing that you really need to do on these, right now, if we try to pull on it, it still won't come apart because the film rewind lever is inserted all the way into the camera. This actually pulls out. I didn't know this at first, and I had to Google it to find it myself. So we're going to pull this out. Kind of twist and pull at the same time. That seems to kind of help. And now you can see it's actually pulled out about a ½ inch outside of the camera, and then we can pull the camera body apart, no problem. Okay, now with the camera apart, you can see that again it's just a box, and this one, even on the inside, you can see it still has the label, the Kodak label in there that says that it uses 120 film, which is really cool that that label still is even intact and looks really nice. Yeah, the camera itself has a black matte finish over some thin steel sides with some cardboard in here that directs the light out to the film, and then the base of this that's inside the cover is wooden. It's a piece of black wood, or wood that's been stained black rather, And this particular model also still has one of the original spools here, which is a wooden dowel with two metal ends. That's very similar to the modern day spools that we have now, but the modern day spool is black. This one is wooden. I'm going to go ahead and remove this spool. Go ahead and remove the spool. So you can see we have the old style wooden dowel spool with the little metal ends, and then we have the now, they're all plastic. And I'm actually not going to use the original one. I want to keep this intact. I don't want to lose it. So we're going to just put this to the side, and I'm going to replace it with a black plastic one, because we have to have a take-up spool. This is spooled film, so it's not like 35mm where it has a cartridge that comes out, goes back in. This is spool film. It's going to come off of one spool, and then it's got to have another spool to go on. So this empty spool here is the spool that our film will go on as I'm dropping it every which way. And then the new film that we have here will get loaded. We're going to load this new film here. Let's take this out of its bag. And so our new film roll, you can see it's already on a spool, so it's going to come off of this spool and go on to the other spool. So now let me go find the spool. Okay, I found the spool. So now we have our empty spool and our other spool. So the idea here is, and with any camera that uses this film, is you put it in an empty spool, you put it in this spool, and then you take the film leader and you hook it to this one, and then as the film is used and you wind the film winder, it pulls it off of the spool and it goes on to this spool. So when you're done, your film is on this spool and this one's empty, and then you pull out the full one and you put the empty one over, and you just keep rotating like that. So all of these cameras, that's why any medium format camera like this or like this camera, it had one empty spool at the top. So they should always have one empty spool. So if you go looking for these cameras to buy them, I would suggest to make sure they have that one empty spool in there for you. Otherwise, you're going to have to find an empty spool to put in there if you don't already have 500,000 of them like I do. I've got plenty of these laying around because I save them for purposes like this, or in case I were to lose one or something like that. Okay, I've moved up a little bit so you can just see what's going on with the camera. And you don't have to look at my face anymore. You can get a better picture of what's going on here. So we have our unexposed roll of film here. We have our empty spool here. And we're going to take our empty spool and put it in place first. So the empty spool is going to go down on the bottom where there's a hole here where the film rewind lever comes through, and the film rewind lever has a little T that will lock into the slot on this film. You can see it's hard, might be really hard to see, but there's kind of like a hole but then a slot, and it's got a slot that goes out from either side, and that's going to lock into, if you look at the film lever on the camera, it's got a little, it might be really hard to see too, but there's like a little T there on that. It's like a little flat T on the end that's going to actually go into this slot on here and allow us to roll our film successfully. So the empty spool is going to go down here where that lever resides, and it's going to be the end with the hole. So we're going to go ahead and put the empty spool in here. Put that in, kind of push these little tabs. Only one side, on the bottom one, only one side has a tab with the spindle on it, because the other side is going to be taken care of by the film rewind lever. So then we're going to take our roll of film and we're going to tear off the paper that's used to hold it together, and I'm going to take the new film roll, and it's going to go on top with the paper facing this way, because the film is on this side here. So when we pull that down, we want that side facing the inside of this box. You can see what's going to happen is when we pull this film through, we're going to have a negative filling this area of the box right here, and then when I flip my little shutter lever, which is on the side, hear that little shutter going, there's a little flap that just flies by in front of and lets the lens open for about 1/30 of a second, and it's going to let light through there up for about 30th of a second. It's going to go through this hole and then hit this film that's back here. It's extremely simple. I mean, it's almost like a pinhole style camera, but with a little bit more sophistication. So we're going to take our roll of film here, and we're going to get him snapped in place with these two spindles at the top. So now my film's on, and then we're going to pull this film, and if you look in the corners here, we have a couple of rollers, and that film's going to go right around those rollers. So we're going to pull the film around the rollers. It's going to come all the way off here, and you see this arrow? We want this arrow that's here to be lined up right about on the corner here, okay? That's what we're going for. So we're going to pull this around. We're going to come to our empty spool here, and we are going to put this guy in our... We're going to take our empty spool, and we're going to load this film in here. Give it a little twist. To lock it in so it doesn't come out on us, I'm going to drop our spool in here. And we want this thing I'm going to take it and give it just a little spin. So now that we have our film stuck through the tongue stuck through this bottom roll good enough, it's still kind of loose, but we're going to go ahead and just carefully insert the two pieces now. And then once that's done, we'll go ahead and lock our locks back, and this will make our film, our box light tight again. And then we're going to take this one and just kind of push it in, and then you're just going to kind of push and twist until it locks, and then it'll set all the way down in. And once that happens, it's all the way back in. We know now that it's connected into the slot on the film spool, and we can start winding our film. And as you wind the film, we're going to watch this little red window back here as we start winding the film through. And I see a line, the arrow that just went by. So I saw the arrow go by. That means I know that I'm connected and I'm pulling. Now if the film slips off and you're spinning it, you want to make sure you're watching this window, because you're going to see the big black arrow come by, the bar from that, and then you're going to see some other little arrows come by before we get to the number. And if you're seeing those arrows, you know you're actually winding film off the spool and you're getting it ready to shoot. So it's going to take a few winds. We're just going to keep winding until we see. So now I'm seeing some arrows. I don't know if you can see that in the video or not, but there's a little black arrow here that's pointing upwards. So once that arrow, we see that arrow, we know we still got to go a little further, and we can see that there's another little asterisk, a bigger asterisk, bigger asterisk, and then the number 1. So this particular film, we had an arrow and 3 different size asterisks looking things, and then we have the number 1. So now we're on frame number 1 in this awesome box camera ready to go. So now I don't want to flip that shutter, because if I do, I'm going to take a photo. And I'm really excited about this, as you can tell from this video. I hope you are too. But we're shooting Ilford HP5 Plus 400 speed film in this today, because this camera only has one shutter speed, a 30th of a second or thereabouts. And the aperture, I'm guessing, is somewhere around f11. So I'm going to expose this film for 1/30th of a second at f11. So I only have one option to expose, which means there's only one specific amount of light that's going to expose at that option. So we're going to go at 1/30th of a second and see what happens. Okay, so we got our film in here. We got it all tightened back up. We got it cranked to number 1. We see the number 1 in the back here, and we can move on. Now, just to let you know, I am shooting Ilford HP5 Plus, which is a 400 speed film, and I really like this film, especially for a camera like this, because it's a very flexible film. So you can shoot it at 400 speed, you can shoot it at 800, at 1600, 3200, at whatever speed you want, and just develop it accordingly. And you could even pull it down to 200 or probably even 100. Although this film is most popular for push processing, which means shooting it higher than its rated ISO 400. But I'm going to shoot it at 400 today because I believe that with the 1/30th of a shutter speed that this camera is supposed to have, and I'm guessing the aperture around f11, that the 400 speed film will give me that correct exposure outside today. Indoors, it would be very difficult to hit this without some bright lights to get that exposure. But outdoors today, it's very overcast, and I metered it. It metered at a 30th of a second at about f13. So f11 should give us just a little bit of overexposure, but it should still give us enough of an exposure to get a good exposure as long as our assumptions are correct. And this is f11 and a 30th of a second, which from the research I've done on this camera, I think that's a pretty safe bet. I think our negatives should come out pretty good, and we may have to, maybe we have to bring them up a little bit in the computer or whatever, but this guy's ready to shoot. So let's go do that. Okay guys, we are downtown Mansfield with the box camera and a tripod, and we're gonna see what we can get with this thing. Okay, it's sprinkling a little bit of rain right now, so we're gonna have to work quickly and get through this. But first I thought I'd show you how I'm gonna attach this to the tripod. I took my tripod and I have an L bracket, a universal L bracket. It's just a bracket. So what I did is I put this L bracket on the tripod. We're gonna tighten it down good. And I took the screw out of it that normally would go up into your camera. I removed that. So we're gonna set the box flat because it doesn't really have a tripod mount, but this is a great way to do it. We're gonna grab the camera. We're gonna take the camera and then just sit it on the L bracket like that. And then to secure it, we're just gonna wrap a piece of Velcro strap around it. And if I take the Velcro with the soft side toward the camera and I stick it through the handle on the top, and I bring it around here, I can just kind of pull it, somewhat snug and strap it, and I'm going to leave that sticking up so I can take it off easy and switch it. So now with the strap Velcro through the handle, the camera's not going to fall off, or if it slips any, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to slide out from under it and fall on the ground, and that wouldn't be good for a camera to have made it 89 years and me to drop it on the concrete in a few seconds and ruin it. So I don't want to do that. So we got it strapped, and then because of the way it comes around behind the tripod here on the back side and through the handle, it's pretty well secure. It's not going to go anywhere. It's pretty light anyway, but with a 30th of a second of a shutter speed, we need to keep it pretty steady. So let's go take some pictures. All right, before we head out, what I thought I'd go over real quick, I brought my Ricoh GR2 with me, and this little camera, I can set it to have a 35mm crop, and that's going to help me frame, because the viewfinder in this old camera is pretty much useless. I'm not going to see really anything in it, so I'm going to use this camera with 35mm, which is what I'm guessing this lens is, and I'm going to do my framing with this and then take my picture with the other camera, and I'll probably also shoot the digital photo as well, just so I can compare the two later to see how well I did on my framing and how close 35mm really is to this camera. Sorry about all the cars going back and forth, but hopefully you're enjoying the sound of the carousel in the background here in downtown Mansfield. And the carousel is one of their landmarks, so if you're ever here, you should check it out. So let's go take some pictures. All right, so this is the first picture I'm going to take. It's going to be of this building here, and I like this because there's a lot of textures, and the reason I decided to come downtown is to get the textures of the brick and these old buildings down here instead of just trying to do trees. I could always go do trees, but I thought this might be more interesting, give us some more variety. So what we're going to do is go ahead and snap the first photo. I've got the camera, as you can see, it's all set up, pointed to the building, and I framed it with the Ricoh. So we're going to take this picture and see what happens. And here comes a lady. Let's see if we can get her in it as well. Okay, we took that first picture, and one thing I realized is you need to hold the camera as well, because it slid a little bit when I took the exposure, so that one might not be the greatest, but we'll see what happens when it gets developed. So let's do another one of the same building, but in a landscape format. Okay, so I flipped the camera to its side, to do a landscape. This camera actually shoots in a portrait mode by default. If you sit it up and down, it's going to be long ways that way, because it does shoot a 6:9 negative, which is, you know, it's going to be taller than it is wide, so it's going to be a portrait to start with. So to get a landscape or a horizontal style picture, you're going to want to lay the camera on its side. So because of that, we're going to have a huge 6:9 centimeter negative, and you're only going to get 8 shots on this roll. So let's see what happens. 2 things to remember. I took the picture. First thing I need to do is rewind it to the second photo, which I almost forgot to do, and then we can take the picture. Okay, so I carefully wound it to number 2. We've got it sitting sideways here, and then I'm going to hold it firmly and just flip the switch. Boom. I just took my second picture with this thing. So as soon as I take that picture, you need to rewind it. Otherwise, you're going to end up just making multiple exposures on one frame, and that could be cool, but then it could not be cool. Okay, so I just took a picture of this building behind me here. It's a really cool old bank or something here in Mansfield, but we'll see how that turns out. Okay, so at this corner we took a picture of this car behind me here and the building across the street over there. So we'll see how those come out. We are back from shooting the camera downtown, and I'll probably throw some video clips of me down there that I did a little bit of vlogging, so you can see kind of my process and what was going on. So I'm sure you've already seen that by now, but anyway, we are back. So now the film is shot, and once you've finished your last shot, you need to wind this little key completely until all the paper goes by this window and it's just clear again. You'll see a lot of paper. There's a lot of paper on the end and the beginning of these rolls in order to keep it light tight while you transport it. So you just got to keep rolling until all that paper's gone, and you can feel it rolling pretty easily. So now we can reopen the camera and take out our film. So we undid the 2 clips, and now we're gonna just kind of work this little guy back out, get it all the way back out again, and as we pull this open, voila, there's our roll of film. And you can see it's all black now. This particular film, it's white when it goes on, and then when you're done, the last section is black, so you know that that's an exposed roll. So we're gonna go ahead and we remove this, and so now the spool that the film was on is in here, and it's empty now, and that'll be there ready for the next time use. And again, I'm gonna leave the plastic spools in there because I want to preserve the original wooden and metal one. So here we go. That was it. That's the box camera. So now it's time to take our exposed roll of film and go process it. Let's do that now. I'm going to go process this and let it dry and everything, and then when I have the negatives, I'll come back. You guys want to learn how to develop black and white film, there's tons of videos on YouTube for that, so we won't take you through all that. I'm sure this is already long enough. See you in a bit. Okay everybody, here it is. The negatives from the box camera on the light box. Look at that, 8 beautiful 6:9 centimeter images. You get 8 images per roll on a 120 film on this. Normal medium format cameras, you would get maybe 12 to 16 smaller negatives, but on this one, you're only going to get 8 photos a roll. But it was just an absolute blast to shoot. It was a lot of fun. I definitely got a lot of looks from people as I was out shooting it downtown, and I took these images. The first image is a little blurry because I bumped the camera and slid the camera as I was flipping the shutter, and then the last image, the crop was a little off from what I was assuming, so I cut off a little bit of the lettering on some of the letters on the sign on the last image. Other than that, the images in the middle, images 2 through 7, all came out really nice. Very well exposed and just very nice overall. I was very happy with it. So once we got them scanned into Lightroom and did a little bit of digital dodge and burning on them, lightening and darkening and tweaking, we have some really nice images, and it's nothing different than I would do with any other image that I would take. So I didn't do anything more with this camera than I would have done with any other film camera, digital file for that matter, once I got them scanned into the computer. But they were beautiful 42 megabyte files, very large images. So let's take a look at a few of these on the computer after my scanning and my minor tweaks.
Okay, here are the photos, and you can see the first photo is a little blurry from where I bumped the camera, or it moved when I hit the shutter speed. The second photo, pretty nice and sharp and good contrast. Holding the camera still helped a lot. The third photo of the bank over on the corner, really nice again, good contrast, a lot of detail in the photo. The next photo of the downtown area, antique store there, looked very cool. A lot of tones and detail there. Oh, and this was my favorite one of the car, my most favorite one of this whole 8. Just a gorgeous tones in that. I just loved it. And then this one, the building across the street, a little more monotone, but still the detail on the brick, the road is very nice. And then the other car, framed in the old sign with the sign that was gone, was really nice. And then finally the last image, the Mansfield sign, was cut off a little bit because my framing should have been more like a 50mm lens instead of a 35mm lens. So lesson learned for next time. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video.